What's up, guys? Universal Mastery. So what I do on my channel is I break down the occult sciences to a very practical level so that you can understand them and apply them in your day-to-day life and get real, actual results. So what we're going to be talking about in today's video is adding on to the segment of the Hermetic principles. So the principle that we are going to be talking about right now is principle number 6, which is the principle of cause and effect. Stay tuned. Okay, so the first thing that I want to say is definitely make sure you go and check out my Patreon. In order to gain access to the exclusive videos that are already on my Patreon and the exclusive weekly video that will be added to my Patreon that will not be on my YouTube channel, you got to be a tier 2 or up. As you go up in tiers, the benefits are going to change as well. You're going to get more things offered to you. So go check that out for yourself. But in order to be a tier 2, it is literally going to cost $9.95 a month, which literally comes out to less than $1 a day. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to afford that for the value that is being offered. So definitely make sure you check that out. The link is going to be at the very top of the description. You just go to the description, you'll see the link right there. It says My Patreon. And I want to give a special shout out to the top tier members of the Patreon. Their names are going to be mentioned right below that link. So yeah, definitely go check that out. But other than that, going right into this video. Okay, so this is one of the, every single principle when it comes to the Hermetics, they're all so important, and they all have their piece, and they all have a specific value that they offer. There is no one principle that's more important than the other. They all come together. They're all intertwined, and they're all connected. This one specifically, though, is a really interesting one to try and dissect and to try and see how it works, because we see this one operate all the time. We see how if I do something or if you do something, depending on what it is that you're doing or that you do, there is going to be some effect. So if let's say, for example, I present my Patreon because I want you guys to see the exclusive content that's on there. And it's also building it's essentially building my own business. I have exclusive videos on there. You have to pay to gain access to those videos, but the videos on there are very important. So it's like creating my own business. But the point that I'm making is that when I present that in the beginning of the videos, that's a cause. And the cause is putting it out there. It's saying, hey, look, if you want to take your practices to the next level, then check out my Patreon. And for a small price, you can gain access to that. And obviously, as you go up in tiers, the price goes up, but so do the benefits. You can check that out for yourself. But then the effect would be gaining more Patreon subscribers, getting more people involved in the exclusive content that I have on my Patreon, which would be a beneficial thing for everybody, because once again, the stuff that I have on my Patreon is fundamental. It's very essential when it comes to actually practicing, and you're gonna gain a 10 steps ahead of the game if you can start studying what's on my Patreon and actually practicing and applying it. So that would be a cause and effect. Now let's look at other different types of causes and effects. So let's say you go out in your day-to-day life, and you're doing your thing. It's nothing's out of the ordinary, essentially. Then let's say you go home, and there's somebody at your house that says something to you, right? And what they said to you is very triggering. Like, let's say they said something that just got right under your skin. Like, fuck, like, why did they say that to me? That was completely that was just out of the blue. It was completely disrespectful. I do not like the fact that they said that. Now, depending on where you're at with your own self-development, whether you know how to handle those types of situations, whether you know how to vent those types of situations, or maybe you're not that far ahead of the game when it comes to self-development, and you kind of hold that in. right? You're holding it in now. You're like, they said that to me. That was completely disrespectful. I do not like that they crossed that boundary, but I'm not even going to stand up. I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to act like it was nothing. And then you hold that in, right? What that ends up doing is that turns into a trauma, a small trauma. At first, with the hypothetical situation that I'm sharing with you guys, that would create a very small trauma that within time, if you continue to hold on to that and that person continues to cross that boundary with you, will end up growing. But let's say you hold on to that and then you go out, right? You go out to hang out with some friends, let's say. Now you're hanging out with these friends, and next thing you realize is that you are being extra assertive with them because you're really comfortable with them, and you're almost subconsciously and unconsciously projecting that anger or that trauma that you had held on to from that person that you were not comfortable with, from that person that you are kind of afraid of. But now you're holding that trauma, you're holding that pain, that anger, and now you're projecting it on someone else. But you're not even aware that you're doing that. Okay, that is a law of cause and effect. So that person that caused you to have that anger and have that built up trauma has now caused you to hold on to that, and now the effect of that is now you're projecting that on somebody else, and that can spread like a wildfire. But then you have to also ask yourself, the question is, you've got to be more self-responsible than that. It's not the person that said that to you necessarily. It's not their fault, because you're gonna run into people like that. Those kinds of people are a part of life. They are a part of growth, and they are a part of self-development. You are going to run into people that cross boundaries with you. You are going to run into people that trigger the fuck out of you. You are. And that is, once again, it is an essential part of self-development. Okay? So it is your responsibility to not hold on to that trauma, to not let it fester inside of you and not stand your ground or say anything or express how you feel to the person that's the root issue of what the situation may be. It's your responsibility, and then it's also your responsibility to not go to your friends or to go to somebody else or someone that doesn't deserve it, and then express that built-up anger that you have on them because you don't care about them. Because it's not like, there's no playing the victim here. There's no like, oh, it's not fair, this person did it to me, now I'm gonna let it out on them. And this is the hard part. A lot of times when people project their pain or their anger or their suffering, project it, they're unaware that they're doing it. They just feel like they need to vent it. That's why it's so important to start working on yourself, because you do become much more self-aware, and you start to realize when you are projecting emotions, when you're projecting you could say even your beliefs, your ideas, that just aren't meant to be projected on others. You immediately will be aware, like, why am I telling this person this? They don't care. Like, they're not meant to hear this, right? This is for me. And you start to become more aware, and you start to gain more self-control over your mind, because even though you may want to vent your issues or project on somebody else, even though you may want to because you need to let it out, you will find, because you're doing self-development, you will find different ways to process it through yourself. Okay, and it's not easy. I'm not saying that this is easy. There are different outlets that you can take. You can be honest with somebody else. You can tell somebody else if you have that built up anger and you don't have what it takes to stand up to the person that's causing it. There's a different approach. You can talk to someone that you trust and say, hey, look, I went through this, and be honest. Like, hey, look, this just happened to me. I'm feeling upset, and be honest. Speak to them on the same level. Say, hey, look, this just happened. I went through this. I feel like I'm angry right now. I just need to talk about this. That's another way that you can process it, rather than just being a dick or being an asshole to whoever it is. just to process it. And then there's also therapy. There's therapists that it's their job to listen. It's their job to listen to you and then essentially neutralize you so that you can vent your issues to them, and they know how, they're aware of it. They're aware that this is a process of the human nature. We need to express energy, okay? And then when you become aware enough, you learn how to process it within yourself. You will immediately realize, this person said this to me, it crossed that boundary. Now I have two choices here. If I don't feel like engaging myself in trying to stop that person or let that person know that they are not going to do that to me again, and that they're not going to cause that type of disrespect or cross that boundary with me, then then you go and talk to them. You go and handle that. But if you feel like you can't do that and you're not going to do it, then you say, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm going to look at what that person told me, and I'm really going to try and figure out, as much as it's as painful as it is, as uncomfortable as it is, I'm going to figure out why whatever it was that they said to me made me lose my position. Why are they shaking me out of my natural state? What did they say that got under me that is causing me to not be focused or to not be as clear-minded as I usually am? And that process is not easy, and it's hard. And this can also correlate to working on your shadow. So in that moment, if you're going to process it yourself, it is going to be painful, meaning that your mind is most likely going to go to some level of a dark stage or a dark state, a dark paradigm where you are angry. Like, it's not fair that this person said this to me, and this person pissed me off, but why did that piss me off? It's like a battle. It's like you want to just lose your self-control, but at the same time, you also want to understand. And the more that you engage in those battles, you are going to feel pain. It is not going to be easy. But as you do it more often, as you do it more consistently, it gets easier and easier and easier. And your ego, the part of you that wants to be like, it's not fair, and then wants to vent on other people or wants to just go and destroy the person that did it to you, it actually bypasses the ego, and then you get to look at it from a spiritual perspective, which is, is what that person really said to me, is it really that big of a deal? Like, are they really someone that I should feel offended by? Are they really powerful enough that what they say matters enough that I should feel like I'm out of control? And this is the kind of perspective that you get to. So this was all, that was a little bit of a tangent of how cause and effect can work. Let's look at a different way that cause and effect can work. So let's say you're doing magic, right? And let's say specifically with ritual and specifically with spells. So first, let's do ritual. So let's say that you want to develop yourself. Let's say that you want to get to the awareness level of what I'm talking about, so that you're not getting triggered so often, so that you feel like you have much more control over how you respond to things and how you handle situations. So let's say that you want to do a ritual, and the ritual is all geared towards improving yourself. It's geared towards becoming more self-aware, becoming more powerful, strengthening the areas of yourself that you may not even be aware that you need to strengthen. Okay, let's say that is your intention. You may not have to know it exactly the way that I just explained it, but all you have to do is have that little bit of intention that you want to become more aware and you want to develop yourself more efficiently. So let's say that you go in the ritual and you perform a certain type of meditation. Let's say you have certain items that you're using in this ritual, as symbolism, and then as your, let's say that you may even bring a spirit into it to help you develop, right? So you call in an ancient spirit, you call on a powerful spirit that's going to help you through this process. You sit down, and then you start just kind of calming your mind, and then you start to visualize certain things happening. You start to visualize yourself improving. You start to visualize. It could be, there's all different ways that you can, there's many different things that you can visualize that can correlate to you self-developing, improving yourself. There's not like you have to visualize this and that's only it. You can envision yourself, you could say your astral double, your higher self, or your daemon, whatever it is to you. You can envision that person being on fire with like golden flames. You can envision that as a way of maybe symbolizing to yourself that is empowering you, or that's purifying you, and it's strengthening you. It could be a red flame, a blue flame, a purple flame. Now, the more advanced that you get in your practices and in your knowledge, you'll start to realize that different colors correlate with different planets, and different planets have different influences, so you will most likely use them strategically. So I'm going to use this color flame to symbolize a certain level or a certain aspect of self-development. But also at the same time, if you do not know about these different planetary influences, you don't know about what colors specifically may symbolize, then I would recommend that you start to dive into that and learn about that. I have that on my Patreon actually as well, with all the planets and their attributes. But you don't necessarily need to do that. I mean, there's no rules to this shit, right? It's just going to make it easier. It's going to make it more effective, but there's not really rules. So if you feel a certain intuitive color coming to you and you want to envision yourself just on fire with that color and have it symbolize you being empowered, then by all means do that. So let's say that you do that. Next thing you know, you close the ritual. You feel like you've sat there long enough. You feel like you've envisioned long enough. You put enough energy into it. Let's say that you have your candles around you. You blow your candles out. You're starting to clean things up and just, you're done. Now, let's say that you have work a couple hours later. You go to work. Next thing you know is that there are certain situations that are starting to manifest around you that most likely are going to be maybe a little bit challenging, in the sense of you may, after you leave that self-empowerment or self-development ritual, most of the times you're not going to leave that ritual and then things are just going to be blissful. There is a process to development. There's a process to improving yourself and becoming more powerful. And that process is through challenge, and a lot of the times through adversary. Okay, so you may find yourself after performing that self-development ritual that you are now going to work, and now there's people that are asking you questions that you never had answers to. Or they're saying things that are causing you to really self-reflect. Like, what the fuck? This is the weirdest day I've ever had. Right? And that's all correlating to that specific ritual that you did with self-development, because what is it doing to you? Look from an outside perspective. Now you're at your job and you're experiencing experiences that you are not comfortable with. But what does that mean when you're not comfortable with something? That means that you have to grow. There's a sink or swim attitude to it. You either let that just be like, you can let that type of situation be like, oh, I'm never doing this again, and I never want to experience that again. Or you can look at it from another perspective that says, that was tough, that was challenging, but now I have that much more skill that's attached to my tool belt. I have that many more tools that are on my tool belt now, and that will never be able to hold me back again. And the more that you work on it, the more effective you become. The more effective you become, the more you master the way that you react to certain situations, the way you master the way that you command certain situations, the way that you just understand how things work in general, without getting caught up in this left or right perspective. It's either this or it's either this. That is not true. It's always this. It's always this. It's always going to be balanced. When you look at one perspective, just know that because there's that perspective, there's got to be this perspective. And neither one of them is right or wrong. They both need to exist to create power, just like the positive and the negative charge creates power for electricity. Okay, we have electricity running through our veins, as above, so below. Okay, so that is another form of cause and effect. You do that self-empowerment ritual, next thing you know, the effect is there's changes that are happening significantly in your real life, and it's causing you to grow. Now, that cause and effect can change depending on what types of workings that you're doing. I'm not going to go too in depth with that, but okay, so let me take an example of doing a spell. So, and I'm going to use this example intentfully because there's a lot of people that do things like this. Let's say that you're going to do a spell, a love spell on somebody, right? And let's say, and this is a common thing, right? This is a common thing when you're a beginner. A lot of people, when they first get into black magic and they start realizing how real this occult practice is, they want a lot of the times the first thing that they want to do is do like some sort of love spell to see if it works. And I can't say anything about that because I did something similar to that as well. I wanted to see if it worked. And I did a love spell because love spells are pretty simple and they give you that direct feedback. Like, you'll know if it works, you'll know if it doesn't work. But as you mature with your practice and as you mature as a person, you realize that yes, it is very effective. It is very effective, but you also realize that there is you could say a universal will, and that your own true purpose is aligned with that universal will. And if you start doing, let's say, magic or ritual or spell that goes against that universal will, that goes against your purpose to essentially waste your time, that there is a cause to that effect too. And that effect is not pleasant. It is not going to be fun. Meaning that, let's say, for example, I cast a love spell on somebody that I'm not really in love with. And they're not in love with me, but I'm very attracted to that person and they're very attracted to me, and I cast a love spell on them. And in my head, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's gonna be, they're just gonna be like drooling over me and all that stuff. And let's say I cast that spell and that's what happens. But in reality, my purpose is telling me to move down this direction. It's telling me to go down this path. But what I'm trying to do, what I want to do, what my body and my desires want, is to have this person drooling over me and be engaging with this person more than I probably should, and just kind of spending more time with that person rather than down the path that I'm supposed to be walking. So let's say I do that. Well, what could end up happening is that the dynamic, because me and this person are not necessarily meant to be together, because I can sense that my path is going down this way, and I'm just attracted physically to this person, and it's not really like we're adding too much benefit to each other's life. Because I choose to go down that road, and let's say I'm stubborn about it, and I insist that I'm with this person. This is who I want to be with, and all that stuff. What can end up happening is a very toxic situation. So even though, let's say, I casted a love spell on that person, it's the effect of that can manifest in many different ways. It could end up manifesting that person is now being affected by that love spell, where emotionally they love me and they want to always be around me and they're obsessed with me, but on a soul and very spirit level, they don't. Their soul wants to go down the right path for them, and realizes that that's not, for me being with them is not where my true path is. And there will be that very underlying layer of awareness that, why are we together? Why do we keep meeting up? And that can manifest in as I said, many different ways that are not positive, many different ways that are not going to be progressive, and that are not going to move either of us forward. It would be like a drug addiction, right? Like, at first when you do a certain drug that feels really good and you haven't done it in a long time, it feels amazing. But if you consistently do it, you'll eventually get that thought or that intuition in your mind that says, okay, it's time to stop. It is time to let go. It's time to go down a new chapter of your life. It was beneficial for the first week that you're doing it because you were experiencing different emotions, you were having certain visions, but now it's time to let go of that shit. It's time to get a little more disciplined and continue down your path. It's the same thing. And if you hold on to that drug, next thing you know, you might, whatever could happen. It depends, what drug you're using, but things that are not going to be beneficial will start to manifest themselves the same way as if you did a love spell. Okay, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you exactly how it's going to manifest because it depends, and it depends on you, it depends on the other person, it depends on the path. But what I can tell you is that it will not manifest in a pleasant way, and you will regret doing it. So you gain this understanding as you mature with your practice, that even spells have a cause and effect. And then let's say that you become aware, okay, you know what, I need to go down this path, and I've cast a spell on this person. You can psychically end that, right? And it's simple. You can literally go your own direction. You can break from it. But it can be a little bit harder to break from that because now you've built a bond with that person on some level. You built some sort of connection spiritually, physically, and emotionally with that person. But in order to put an end to that and continue down your path, you literally have to essentially go cold turkey and say, you know what? I got to do my thing. How important is your future? How important is your destiny? How important is your purpose compared to what you've been trying to hold on to? And you have to break from that. And within time, it's going to hurt. You're going to have to heal through it. You're going to have to process it. But then that psychic link will eventually dissolve, or it will be severed over time. And then you'll continue down your path. You may end up still being friends with that person. You may not. Depends. It all depends, but that is another form of cause and effect. So I hope this video could give you a little bit of clarity on how cause and effect works. And you always want to be aware, even especially when you're doing baneful magic, curses, things of that nature. How and what is going to be the effect of what I am about to cause? You have to always analyze these things before you move forward, because you don't want to do something in the heat of a moment that is then a couple days, a week, a month, a year down the road going to come back and kick your ass. Like, what if I cast a baneful curse on somebody that I was going to end up making up with later down the road, and I was going to end up connecting with again later down the road? What if just now we weren't getting along, and I was supposed to end up connecting with that person, but then in the heat of the moment, because of what that person said, now I do a curse on them, and now their life is literally going to shit, and now I just ruined an opportunity for me to reconnect, to re-heal all those traumas and those emotions that I used to have from that person that I literally just said, you're done. And you have to take these things into account, and you gotta be wise with your spells. You gotta be wise with your rituals. You gotta be wise with what you do. Okay, that's why it's so important to work on your self-development and to make that a consistent practice. Okay, so other than that, guys, I'm gonna leave it here. Make sure you hit a thumbs up. Also hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell, and once again, go to the Patreon. It's going to be the first link at the top of the description. I've got exclusive videos that are already on there. I got exclusive written posts, and I'm going to have an exclusive video that will be weekly that is not going to be on my YouTube channel. Okay, it's not going to be open for everybody unless you're a tier 2 or up. Tier 2 is $9.95, less than $1 a day, a month. Okay, so then go to the link below that. That's going to take you to the Streamlabs merch, where you can get a Hecate sigil shirt. If you place your order, they will literally ship it right to your door. Then go to the third link below. That's going to take you to the Facebook community, where you go there, you're going to see a pinned post that says private group here. Click that, request to join. I will add you in. And that's going to wrap it up, guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day or night wherever you are, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.